Hello everyone, welcome to Focused Fields. Today in this video, we'll understand Charter Act of 1813, Charter Act of 1833 and Charter Act of 1853. Charter Act of 1813. To begin with, we got to know what does charter mean. In simple words, it is a license where a British crown is going to give it to company for the period of 20 years. At the time of renewal of this charter or license, it could change the powers of company in India. That is what charter mean. Now to legislate Charter Act of 1813, there are two major reasons. First thing, the merchants in Britain are fed up because East India Company was given monopoly. And second one, and the second reason, Christian missionaries need permission. For what reason? To come to India and promote their mission of spreading their religious order. To address these two demands, Charter Act of 1813 was made. Now let's see, it abolished the trade monopoly of the company in India and opened the trade to all British merchants. However, it continued the monopoly of company over trade in tea and trade with China. What does this line mean? In Charter Act of 1793, it has given monopoly to East India Company, meaning it is the only legal entity which can trade in India. Now, in Charter Act of 1813, what has been given? This monopoly of East India Company was removed, meaning the trade of India was thrown open to British. That is what ending the monopoly means. And next thing, it continued, the second clause says, it continued the monopoly of company over trade in tea and trade with China. Britain wants to import some tea. Not all the merchants can do trade in tea. It is only East India Company which is a legal entity that can trade in tea. If they were to trade with China, only East India Company is permitted. And second thing, it asserted the sovereignty of British Crown over the company territories in India. Meaning of these lines, earlier we discussed an act where the East India Company territories within India were called as British possessions. Now everyone who is watching this video, you need to comment in which act it was called as British possessions of India. To continue with, it asserted the sovereignty of British Crown over the company territories in India. Earlier they were called as only British possessions. Now what they are saying in this act, it is saying that the sovereignty of those territories are with Crown now, meaning Crown can make any decisions in those territories. And next aspect, it allowed the Christian missionaries to come to India for enlightening the people. Is it really for enlightening the people? This act allowed Christian missionaries to travel till India and spread their religion. And it also allowed Western education among Indian subjects, not to whole of Indians, but only the inhabitants of British territories which are under sovereignty of crown in India. Now I hope you understood what I'm trying to say. It means, this line means those territories. For example, if this is India, if the dotted territories are in the pursuit of East India Company, now they are under the pursuit of East India Company, but Crown is the sovereign ruler of those places, right? That is what second line is saying. And now what it is being said, these inhabitants, the people in these places, are being taught with Western education now, not of the whole India. That is what being said. Next thing, it authorized the local governments to impose tax on persons. And it also stated that those persons can be punished for not paying the taxes. It has given permission for punishing people for those who have not paid taxes. And next important thing, this Charter Act of 1813, it has taken responsibility of education in India. Now, how it has taken responsibility? It has granted 1 lakh rupees per year for spreading education within India. That is all about Charter Act of 1813. Let's see what is Charter Act of 1833. Earlier in the Charter Act of 1813, we understood it has ended the monopoly, but East India Company is still having monopoly over tea and trade with China. This Act of 1833, it has ended monopoly over these two things even, meaning this act completely ended commercial activities of the company and made it purely an administrative body, meaning now East India Company is no more a trading company where it is trading spices, where it is trading tea, and where it is trading textiles. It is no more doing this business. It has purely turned into an administrative body now, meaning it takes care of Indian administration now. The second clause saying it provided that the company territories in India were held by it. Held by it means it were held by East India Company in trust of His Majesty. Who is the Majesty of East India Company here? It is the Crown. To understand it in simple words, let me give you an example. There is a friend with name Ramo and there is a friend with name Sham. These both are best friends. Ramo is having playing cards. He is having 20 playing cards with him. He gave them to Sham as Sham asked them for playing. After giving it to Sham, Ramo has given a statement saying, you can use them, you can play with them, and you can build an empire, which we used to do with the playing cards. Okay, he said you can use them, you can play with them, you can build an empire with that playing cards. But if you see, he has given them temporarily, meaning Sham must return those 20 cards back to Ramo whenever Ramo demands. I hope you understood what I am trying to say. Even these lines say the company, East India Company, can claim territories, can make any rules in them, but those territories are under the sovereignty of Crown. That is what the first statement is saying in Charter Act of 1833. And next thing, it made Governor General of, okay, sorry, it is Governor General of Bengal. It made Governor General of Bengal as Governor General of India and vested him with all civil and military powers. Meaning, earlier there were many governors: Governor General of Bengal, Governor of Bombay, Governor of Madras. Everyone was making laws in their own jurisdiction, meaning Governor of Bombay is making laws and implementing those policies in Bombay. Governor of Madras is making laws and policies and implementing them in Madras, right? But this Act of 1833 made the legislative powers centralized, meaning Governor General of Bengal is having all the legislative powers now. For whole of India, those territories or those possessions which were held by East India Company now, in those territories, no other governor can make rules and policies. It is only Governor General of India who can make policies and rules. That is what the second statement and third statement has been saying. Now, who is the first Governor General of India? Lord William Bentinck. As we discussed, it centralized legislative powers where Governor General was given exclusive legislative powers. Those positions which were held by East India Company, in all of those positions, now who can make laws and policies? It is Governor General of India, not the governors of those presidencies. Next aspect, it attempted. See the word, it attempted. to introduce open competition for selection of civil servants and stated that Indians should not be debarred from holding any place or office and employment under the company. What does these line means? However, this was not implemented in Charter Act of 1833, but let's understand what it is. This clause is saying now Indians are also allowed to hold the position of civil services and also other offices. But will Britishers be liking it? Those who are sitting in parliament, will they be liking this thing? No, the court of directors opposed this. However, this is not implemented as we discussed. It is still progressive. It might implement in later stages. Let's see. This act provided for the appointment of law commission, and the first law commission was headed by Lord Macaulay. This law commission in the later stages contributed for drafting Indian Penal Code, which we call as IPC. We know this IPC name has been changed. Comment down the name if you knew it all about Charter Act of 1833. Now let's see what is Charter Act of 1853. This is the last Charter Act that was made by British Parliament to East India Company. Okay, and next thing, by 1853, what has happened? British government, something was running behind their mind. What it is? They wanted to improve the administration, and they wanted to reduce the power of East India Company. Now, to understand this aspect, you must have studied modern history, where this is the time ripening for 1857 revolt. We'll be understanding all these things in modern history classes. For now, what they did, they wanted to improve the administration and reduce the power of East India Company in India. Now they made Charter Act of 1853 in such a way where they wanted to meet their demands. What is their demand? They wanted to remove the East India Company from power within India. Let's see key features of the act. The first thing, as we discussed, it is the last Charter Act that has been legislated, and this act did not provide any specific time frame, meaning the British Parliament can remove East India Company from power at any point of time. That is the first change, that is the first key feature of the act. And next thing, the most important feature is it separated legislative and executive functions. Of whom? Of Governor General in Council. Now tell me, in which act Governor General in Council were reduced from 4 to 3? This is the first question. And second question, who was the person who demanded for military authority? I am repeating the question. There was a person who demanded both political head status and also military head status, and he actually got them. Who is that person? Comment down your answers. Now to continue with, it separated legislative and executive functions of Governor General in Council. Not only separation, but also they created a separate legislative council, meaning there is a council that has been created separately to frame laws within India. This council comprises of 6 members, and for the first time Indians were introduced into the council. Who are those Indians? There were 4 members who were appointed by the local governments of Madras, Bombay, Bengal, and Agra. Out of 6 members, 4 members were Indians in Legislative Council. That was for the first time. And next aspect, this Legislative Council, it acted as a mini parliament. Next key feature of this act is it introduced open competition for civil services. It also appointed Macaulay Committee in year 1854. This act allowed East India Company to acquire Indian territories, but these Indian territories are having sovereignty to crown. These are the important key features of Charter Act 1853. Let's see some previous year questions and MCQs from these topics. The first question, it has appeared in the prelims 2019. Consider the following statements about the Charter Act of 1813. It ended the trade monopoly of EIC in India except for trade in tea and trade with China. Second statement, it asserted the sovereignty of British Crown over the Indian territories held by the company. Third statement, the revenues of India were now controlled by British Parliament. Comment your answers below. Next question. By which of the following acts was the monopoly of trade with India ended for East India Company except for tea and trade with China? This has appeared in UPPCS and Bihar Public Service Commission multiple times. Comment your answers. Third question. Which of the following charter acts generated the post of Governor General of India? That's very simple. We have discussed today. Comment your answers below. This has appeared in Madhya Pradesh Public Service Commission, Rajasthan Public Service Commission and UP Public Service Commission even. Consider the following statements. This is an MCQ, not a PYQ. Consider the following statements regarding the Charter Act of 1853. It introduced a system of open competition for selection and recruitment of civil servants. There is a difference between attempted and introduced. So be aware of these terms. Second statement, it separated for the first time the legislative and executive functions of Governor General's Council. Third statement, it renewed the charter of East India Company for another fixed period of 20 years. If you have listened to this charter of 1853 properly, you would answer this very promptly. Comment your answers below. Next question. The beginning of local representation in Indian Legislative Council was the key feature of which act? We discussed there were 4 members who were appointed to Legislative Council. The local governments did. We discussed Bombay, Madras, Bengal and Agra. From these four provinces, 4 members were added into Legislative Council. Comment your answers below.